la tecnología de procesamiento algorítmico automatizado de la metadata, mal llamada inteligencia artificial, es un tema pues que nos abarcaría innumerables horas y debemos resumir el tema en este último aspecto que queremos abordar, que es cómo esta tecnología se está usando como una arma de destrucción masiva de la humanidad y cómo la propia inteligencia humana es la única que va a poder desbaratar estos planes del gobierno mundial. Hemos dicho anteriormente y nos reafirmamos que toda tecnología no es un buen animal en sí misma, sino depende de cómo se la usa. En este caso particular, incluso no solamente depende de cómo se la usa, sino depende de para qué fue diseñada, ¿no? Es como en el caso Tawantinsuyu, los mentirosos de la historia sostienen que hubo un imperio con un ejército extraordinario, capaz de dominar todo el continente, prácticamente. Y sin embargo, ¿cuál era su tecnología bélica? Porras y mazos hechos de piedra u ondas, huaracas. Claro, en determinado momento de la invasión, puestos ante el genocidio que estaba ocurriendo, se vieron obligados a defenderse y a guerrear. Entonces echaron mano de esas tecnologías que no fueron diseñadas para guerrear, sino eran herramientas básicamente de labranza. Era tecnología de construcciones, labranza y artesanías. Y tuvieron que recurrir a las flechas que no fueron diseñadas para guerrear, sino para cazar. Igualmente a las huaracas, igualmente las boleras. Entonces, en determinado momento esa tecnología se tiene que usar para guerrear, pese a que no está diseñada para guerrear. Sin embargo, los imperios, los verdaderos imperios desarrollan armas para guerrear, armas para matarse a sus semejantes, deliberada y sistemáticamente. Las más connotadas fueron la ballesta en el Imperio chino y la espada en el Imperio romano, entre otras muchas, ¿no? Pero en ese caso sabemos pues que una espada se diseña para matar, para guerrear, del mismo modo que la ballesta, sobre todo producidas en serie. Entonces, esta tecnología que nos las hacen pasar como inteligencia artificial está diseñada con el propósito específico de sostener una guerra silenciosa para la destrucción y exterminio de la humanidad, al mismo tiempo que para presionar, empujar hacia su transición al transhumanismo. Esto es lo que en primer lugar se puede observar. Aquí compartimos un episodio de Corbett Report de junio del 2021, en donde James Corbett nos hace un análisis que nos estaba anunciando el proceso que con la emergencia de las herramientas de la supuesta inteligencia artificial que están haciendo furor, prácticamente están avanzando decisivamente en el proceso de deterioro de la vida natural para intentar su distopía del transhumanismo.
So here we are in June of 2021, and as we sit here a year and a half into this generated health crisis, I think only the dopiest of mainstream normies still believe that this is fundamentally about some spreading novel coronavirus, and assuming they are even opposed to the biosecurity agenda that is rolling out ahead of them, they may still be trapped within the paradigm of trying to argue about infection numbers and the relative efficacy or inefficacy of various interventions proposed by the would-be public health authorities. But I think we all understand by this point, if you're watching the Corbett Report, that this is not about a virus, and this is not going to be mitigated by making rational arguments and carefully prepared charts and PowerPoint slides about, well, the The mask mandates seem to have no effect, so I don't understand why these politicians continue to persist with their failed interventions. No, I think we've all progressed beyond that point, haven't we? I certainly hope so. If not, get up to speed with the reality of what's going on. And the first order of that reality, which I am sure that my audience is aware of and on board with right now, is that this, of course, is about the Corona World Order and the COVID-19 biosecurity state implementation that I've been talking about for a year and a half now and documenting in various podcasts and articles and interviews, textually, visually, and in audio form over the past year and a half. Namely, the implementation of a medical martial law system presided over by unappointed, unelected, unaccountable public health authorities who now have literal control over your everyday movements, who are constructing a total surveillance grid that comes with it the prospect of not just vaccine passports, but health passes generally, which will be used to restrict your ability to access public life, and that you will be guilty until proven innocent of infection under this new paradigm that is being installed. Again, I would like to think that my audience is already caught up to speed on that, but if not, please check the show notes for some links to various podcasts that hopefully will fill you in on those details. But as familiar as I hope you are about that, there is, of course, an even deeper level to this, because it is not just about the implementation of the biosecurity state in particular. It is how the implementation of the biosecurity state is being used to forward a greater agenda. And in that context, again, probably by this point, many of my audience will at least be familiar in broad outline with the World Economic Forum's attempt at branding this agenda the Great Reset, and will hopefully, like hundreds of thousands of others, have seen or listened to my podcast on Your Guide to the Great Reset, where I went through that and started to broach the topic of the Fourth Industrial Revolution and some of the larger implications of what is being instituted right now during this precedent-setting event. Even so, I fear there are far too few who understand what this long-term agenda is really about. Again, it is, of course, not about some spreading novel coronavirus. It is not even about the implementation of a biosecurity state. It is about how that biosecurity state will be used as a stepping stone towards what is being envisioned and even openly touted as the extinction of Homo sapiens, the end of humanity. I am not being hyperbolic. I do not make hyperbolic, hyperventilating statements of that sort without specific documents to back them up. So today, we are going to be exploring this part of the agenda, which, you'll forgive me for thinking, is perhaps the most important thing that we as human beings could possibly be concentrating on at this moment of crisis. I know that it is very tempting to get sucked into the various arguments that are going on right now with regards to various aspects of this health scare that is being used to bring about all of this longer-term plan. But I think we have to have an understanding of the longer-term plan, who is helping to forward it, and what its end goals are, in order to even begin to enter the playing field, the battle space of this war, the war for the future of the human species. Once again, this is not hyperbolic. This is a plain statement of fact. And at that time, we were looking at a Wall Street Journal op-ed that was published under that very title, Looking Forward to the End of Humanity, that talked about this agenda and how it relates to the ginned-up scare that we are living through right now. And in that article, you will recall, it says, people have always feared death and dreamed of escaping it. But until now, that hope has been formulated in religious terms. Transhumanism promises that death can be conquered physically, not just spiritually, and the movement has the support of people with the financial resources to make it happen, if anyone can. Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, and Elon Musk are among the Silicon Valley moguls who have invested in life extension research. In 2013, Google entered the field by launching the biotech firm Calico, short for California Life Company. Transhumanists envision several possible avenues to immortality. Nanorobots could live inside our cells and constantly repair damage, halting aging in its tracks. Genetic engineering could eliminate the mechanisms that cause us to age in the first place. Such technologies are still out of reach, but transhumanists believe we will be able to master them sooner than most people think, with the help of superpowered artificial intelligence. Ultimately, however, the hope is that we won't just use computers, we'll become them. Today, cognitive scientists often compare the brain to hardware and the mind to the software that runs on it. But a software program is just information, and in principle, there's no reason why the information of consciousness has to be encoded in neurons. So, let me get this straight. The human body is essentially a computer hardware that itself, of course, can be upgraded like any computer hardware can. And the various systems that run on that hardware, the software, can, like any software, be reprogrammed and repurposed to make that computer do things differently. Where have I heard this analogy before?
As I've trained as a physician scientist, we've been living this phenomenal digital and scientific revolution. And I'm here today to tell you that we're actually hacking the software of life, and that it's changing the way we think about prevention and treatment of disease.
Oh, that's right. Tal Zaks, the chief medical officer of Moderna, at his TED Talk in 2017, touting Moderna's official company tagline that they are hacking the software of life. That's where I heard the computer/human metaphor before. And unfortunately for all of us, researchers like Tal Zaks and others are not just taking that as a metaphor, they are trying to literalize that metaphor, to actually make it happen. Now, here's the thing that really boggles the mind about this. Here we have what is not just self-evidently, but admittedly an existential threat to the human species. We are talking about fundamentally changing humans at such a basic level that they are no longer categorized as Homo sapiens. Again, I am not saying that, but as we shall see, documents that are being produced at the governmental level are saying that openly, and yet hardly anyone is talking about this. Why is that? Unfortunately, as with so many other things, I think this is primarily a problem of branding, because you may recall, for example, that last year I re-released my 2008 podcast on transhumanism and you. Brock West updated it and made it into a video podcast, and we re-released it. But you may not, because unfortunately, transhumanism is such a dry and stuffy and technical sounding phrase that doesn't seem to connect in to the very real biological, biosecurity, biofascist state that's coming into view in any seemingly logical way. So it generally goes over people's heads, and people don't spend too much time thinking about it. But it is very, very, very much connected to the biofascist technocratic control grid. In fact, in retrospect, of course, this is exactly the type of crisis that is needed to push through the necessary modifications of the software of life and the entire framing of this concept and this idea. This is exactly the type of crisis that was needed to push this through in a thoroughgoing way, as we shall see. So, if this is a problem of branding, I suppose we need to come up with a better rebranding of this so people understand what is happening and actually latch onto it. And in the spirit of a document that we're going to be looking at. Perhaps we could call it biodigital convergence. That is a term that is now entered into the lexicon, at least at the governmental and future trends predicting level. And if the Great Reset was such a powerful and apparently successful rebrand of the New World Order for the World Economic Forum jet set crowd, then perhaps we can piggyback on that and call this the Great Convergence. And perhaps that will at least trigger some curiosity in people so that they start looking into this existential threat to humanity. If so, then, well, glad you could join me for today's exploration. It's a particularly important one. And if you are not familiar with the term of biodigital convergence, then I would wholeheartedly suggest you check into some of my recent work on this topic, where I've been talking about an important document called Exploring Biodigital Convergence by a Government of Canada affiliated institution called Policy Horizons Canada. And I am going to go through that document today because, again, I tend to think this is perhaps the most important issue facing humanity at this time. But please hang on with me, even if you have already encountered this, read my article, seen the source document itself. Please hang on, because today I'm going to go through it and flesh out some of the missing context of this document, provide extra details, and see how it connects into an entire body of scientific thought and literature that has existed before this document came together. So we will be getting into much greater detail today, but I guess to set the table for people who are not familiar with this at all, we, I suppose, should at least understand something about this document in particular, Exploring Biodigital Convergence, and this Policy Horizons Canada from which it is coming. And if you are like pretty much every other Canadian on the planet, let alone every person on the planet, you will never have heard of Policy Horizons Canada. So going to their About Us page on their website, you can learn that we are a federal government organization that conducts foresight. Our mandate is to help the Government of Canada develop future-oriented policy and programs that are more robust and resilient in the face of disruptive change on the horizon. To fulfill our mandate, we analyze the emerging policy landscape, the challenges that lie ahead, and the opportunities opening up. Engage in conversations with public servants and citizens about forward-looking research to inform their understanding and decision-making, and build foresight literacy and capacity across the public service. We produce content that may attract academic, public, and international attention and do not publish commentary on policy decisions of the government. Blah, blah, blah. You can continue reading that type of blather on their site, and you can read about their history and how they developed from the Policy Research Secretariat in the Privy Council office in 1996 and onwards, how they morphed into various forms before assuming their final form, presumably, of Policy Horizons Canada. But for the purposes of today, we are specifically concerned about a paper that they released in February of 2020 that obviously was being prepared before that point, namely Exploring Biodigital Convergence. And I will note that I think it is important to note that this paper was released before the true COVID pandemonium really kicked off, at least in the West, and obviously was written, prepared, researched, thought about well in advance of this current crisis that we are living through. So it is extremely interesting in that context, given what it is talking about and the types of things that it's mentioning. So what is this document? What does it talk about? What themes, what ideas, what does it swirl around? What is the main gist of this article? Well, luckily, you don't have to listen to my summarization of it. We can take it directly from the horse's mouth. That's right, Policy Horizons Canada. Of course, they have a GooTube channel on which, I guess to announce the release of this document, they released this handy-dandy guide to the document and what it is talking about. So without further ado, I present to you unedited Exploring Biodigital Convergence, the video from Policy Horizons Canada. This should clear up any questions. And yet again, I am compelled to note that, no, I didn't make that up. That is literally the video that Policy Horizons Canada posted to their official YouTube page in conjunction with the release of this report. Yes, that is the Exploring Biodigital Convergence video that was released to announce this report, I suppose. If you are driving around or engaged in your daily activities listening to the audio version of this podcast, I will recommend that you go to corbettreport.com/convergence later on when you're at your device in order to look in the show notes and look up that video just so you can see how ridiculous that is, as whatever that is intended to be. I guess that will announce this report to the world with those trumpet blasts as if from the heavens. Anyway, in true Government of Canada style, don't worry, the Francophones are not left out of this. There is a French version of that video that is also available from the Policy Horizons Canada YouTube page. So if you're a French speaker that was confused by that video, don't worry. They've made one just for you as well. Although I am a bit disheartened to note that as at the time that I am recording this podcast, there is only 0 thumbs up and 18 thumbs down on that video that has now over 1,000 views, probably most of which have occurred in the past few weeks as people like myself and a few others in the independent media have pointed to this report. But we can do better than that, can't we, Corbett gang? Anyway, so let's get into the document itself, shall we? And so we're going to turn to Exploring Biodigital Convergence from Archive Today, not from the Policy Horizons Canada website. You can get it from there, of course, but as usual, I will include the link to the archived version of this article so we don't give them any of our traffic, and so that they can't tinker or change anything along the way. This is a snapshot of the article as it existed about a month ago. And here it is. The first thing you will notice about this document after you scan through the table of contents is the foreword. Here we alight upon the smugly smirking face of Christel van der Elst, the Director General of Policy Horizons Canada, who wrote the foreword to this document, which is worth reading because, once again, I want to stress this is not me talking about the extinction of humanity. It is people like Christel van der Elst and Policy Horizons Canada. So in this foreword, it says, in the coming years, biodigital technologies could be woven into our lives in the way that digital technologies are now. Biological and digital systems are converging and could change the way we work, live, and even evolve as a species. More than a technological change, this biodigital convergence may transform the way we understand ourselves and cause us to redefine what we consider human or natural. Please reread that sentence as many times as it takes for the real importance of that idea to sink in. More than a technological change, this biodigital convergence may transform the way we understand ourselves and cause us to redefine what we consider human or natural. Yes, what we consider to be human is going to be redefined for us. Of course, you don't get a say in this. It's the technology that's doing it, or more to the point, the people who are creating those technologies, or even more to the point, the people who are steering this agenda, like the Christel van der Elsts and others who are steering us toward this biodigital convergence. I don't want to aggrandize this particular toady, this gopher, for this agenda, or make her out to be more than what she is, but she represents, I think, the larger agenda that's taking place and who and what is behind it. And so it goes on to talk about profoundly affecting our economy, our ecosystems, and our society, and blah, blah, blah. And we welcome your comments and participation, etc., etc. So Christel van der Elst, let's just start there. Okay, this is the Director General of Policy Horizons Canada, who's written the foreword to this document. Who is Christel van der Elst? Where does she come from? How did she become the Director General of this Government of Canada think tank? Well, remember back in episode 398, Science Says, where we took a look at Dr. Lena Wen going on CNN talking about how you can't open up just willy-nilly without people getting vaccinated first. No, you have to tie people's freedoms to their vaccination status. That's the carrot and stick that we can use, blah, blah, blah. Remember when we looked up, I wonder where this Lena Wen comes from and what her credentials are, and we turned to the World Economic Forum, of course, because of course her biography is going to be there. And we went through the bingo card of globalist institutions that she is related to. Bingo. Yeah. Well, I wonder, Crystal van der Elst. Oh, we don't have to wonder very hard. Yes, of course, Crystal van der Elst connected into the World Economic Forum. Specifically, Crystal van der Elst is CEO of the Global Foresight Group, Director General at Policy Horizons Canada, Special Advisor to European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic, and a Fellow at the Center for Strategic Foresight of the U.S. Government Accountability Office. So very much international background. She is a visiting professor at the College of Europe and the former head of strategic foresight at the World Economic Forum, etc., etc. Crystal, 20 years experience, holds an MBA, etc., etc. Fulbright scholar and a Rotary Foundation ambassadorial scholar. Again, bingo. I think we see she ticks every box imaginable. So this is the background of the person who's at least steering this overall Policy Horizons Canada, if not this particular document, but she is introducing it and telling us we're going to start redefining what we consider human or natural. What does that mean? What is biodigital convergence? Well, of course, they're going to summarize it for us here in the summary, where they talk about digital age and the challenges and changes, etc., etc. And then it goes on to say digital technologies and biological systems are beginning to combine and merge in ways that could be profoundly disruptive to our assumptions about society, the economy, and our bodies. We call this the biodigital convergence. So that's what they're talking about, the merging, the combining and merging of digital technologies and biological systems. And they specifically look at 3 ways biodigital convergence is emerging. The full physical integration of biological and digital entities. Read that again, full physical integration of biological and digital entities, the co-evolution of biological and digital technologies, and the conceptual convergence of biological and digital systems. What does that mean? What are they actually talking about here? Well, they're talking about such things as changing human beings, of course, our bodies, minds, and behaviors, changing and creating other organisms. Yes, creating organisms, alter ecosystems, sense, store, process, and transmit information, manage biological innovation, and structure and manage production and supply chains. And then possible characteristics of these systems, democratization, of course, decentralization, yes, of course, this is all about decentralization, guys, geographic diffusion, scalability, customization, reliance on data. And then policy-relevant questions, could this resource-based competitive advantages fade in the wake of this? Would education and training systems need to be adapted? Blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, by the way, guys, this is the end of the human species, but here's how it may affect the policy decisions of the government. Yeah. And then talking about social attitude shifting, environmental changes, geopolitical, and governance. Getting more down into the meat and potatoes and fleshing out those 3 different trends of biodigital convergence. 1, the full physical integration of biological and digital entities, noting that digital technology can be embedded in organisms and biological components can exist as part of digital technologies. The physical meshing, manipulating, and merging of the biological and digital are creating new hybrid forms of life and technology, each functioning in the tangible world, often with heightened capabilities. Yes, new hybrid forms of life and technology, and they give some examples of that type of technology which already exists, and this is a footnoted document. They have the links to the various things they're talking about, the computer and brain-machine interfaces, the medical use of digital devices in humans, manipulated insects such as drone dragonflies and surveillance locusts, etc. Then it talks about the coevolution of biological and digital technologies. This type of biodigital convergence emerges when advances in one domain generate major advances in the other. So the coevolution of biological and digital sciences and technologies enables progress in each domain that would be otherwise impossible. And this could lead to biological and digital technologies that are developed as integrated or complementary systems. And they talk about complex living systems are increasingly subject to examination and understanding by digital tools and applications. This deeper understanding means that biology is subject to influence and manipulation that was not possible a few years ago. They go on to talk about gene sequencing and, of course, CRISPR-Cas9, which James Pilato and I have covered in great detail about in New World Next Week, etc. over the years. We also see a greater understanding of biology, which is fueling progress in the field of biological computing. They talk about blurring between what is considered natural or organic and what is digital engineered or synthetic. For example, biosynthetic vanilla is created using ferulic acid, eugenol, and glucose as substrates, and bacteria, fungi, and yeasts as microbial production hosts, although it does not come from a vanilla plant. Under both US and EU food legislation, its production from microbial transformations of natural precursors allow it to be labeled as natural flavoring. And please understand, that is just the one specific example of how this is already taking place that they're offering here. But one does not have to imagine very far how that process can be extended out from here with ever more sophisticated technologies for producing biosynthetic materials that will then be legislatively decreed to be the same thing. I can't believe it's not butter. I can't believe it's not human, etc. And then it talks about the conceptual convergence of biological and digital systems, which is an extremely important part of this, and in fact perhaps gives the game away. A third form of biodigital convergence involves a shift in perspective that could reshape our framing and approach to biological and digital realms, facilitating the blending of the two. And then it goes on to say, as we continue to better understand and control the mechanisms that underlie biology, we could see a shift away from vitalism, the idea that living and non-living organisms are fundamentally different because they are thought to be governed by different principles. And yes, you can read more about vitalism. Vitalists hold that living organisms are fundamentally different from non-living entities because they contain some non-physical element or are governed by different principles than are inanimate things. And you can read about this philosophy and its history, but recognize what this is saying. If we do see this predicted shift away from vitalism, what does that mean? It means that, once again, they are trying to literalize the metaphor of the software of life running on our operating system in our genome and all of this type of metaphor that is being applied. No, they do not mean it as a metaphor. They are literally trying to say that we are biological computers, and we can and will be reprogrammed. You are nothing other than the matter that makes up your body, and that can be changed and manipulated in any way, and there's no line to be crossed. There's nothing fundamentally wrong. There is no even right or wrong when it comes to, say, creating these weird chimera species, half pig, half human, whatever. Nothing, there is no line whatsoever. You are simply a collection of matter that can be manipulated. You are a biological robot. Well, why not just make you into a real robot or cyborg of some kind, at least as a medium step towards that future? Again, it's all embodied right here. The shift away from vitalism is exactly the underlying pinning ideology of this. So it's the anti-vitalism that is at the heart of transhumanism or biodigital convergence or whatever label you want to put on this. The fundamental question that is being posed by every single thing that is presented there is, where is that line between where do I end and these digital technologies begin? Of course, they're trying to say, well, it's all this kind of fluid system. You are now part of this biodigital ecosystem that all exists together, and it only works if we're all in it together. That's why we need the bug-bot surveillance drones that are surveilling every part of your apartment and what's going on in the environment outside. And of course, you need the internal sensors and monitors that are looking at your own gut bacteria and everything else, including, of course, what you're dreaming and your psychological states. It's all part of this just big data. It's this collection of everything that can then be managed as this codependent biodigital system. And you are just a part of that system. You aren't an individual entity. You're certainly, vitalism is already gone, as we've seen, so you're certainly not. There's nothing special about you. Your life has no meaning as life. You are just animate matter. As opposed to inanimate matter, it's all the same, really. Can't you see all of these things are just the same? And everything is just this biodigital complex. Isn't it a wonderful world that's coming into view? How optimistic. Well, I don't know. I reach another point of impasse. If you do not see the nightmare of that scenario, then I really wouldn't know how to explain it to you. If you...
Les recomendamos ver todo el programa de Corbett Report. Dejaremos el link en la descripción del video. Lo que queríamos era puntualizar dos cuestiones fundamentales en el contexto actual. Uno, que la inteligencia artificial, entre comillas, está en este preciso momento incursionando decididamente en la mente y corazón de todas las personas, con la idea básica de quedarse allí para siempre y poder monitorearnos en este tránsito hacia la extinción de la humanidad y la supuesta inauguración de la era transhumana. La tecnocracia transhumanista realmente se considera una clase superior, mucho más que eso, una clase divina. Y como tienen los recursos económicos para hacer realidad sus sueños, sus locuras, sus alucinaciones, pues lo están llevando a la práctica y en ese proceso utilizándonos como conejillos de indias a la humanidad y la mayoría de la humanidad creyendo que todo esto se hace por su bien, por el progreso y bienestar de todos. En segundo lugar, hay que tener en cuenta algo que es esencial. La T.P.A.M. es el arma fundamental en el desarrollo de esta guerra silenciosa para destruir la humanidad. La destrucción de la humanidad es el paso y requisito previo para intentar ese supuesto sueño transhumanista. Entonces, cada paso en el que está implicado la T.P.A.M. es un paso que va dirigido a ir deteriorando nuestras cualidades de inteligencia a fin de someternos voluntariamente a este proceso. Hay pues una guerra global en curso, silenciosa, sistemática, integral, multidisciplinaria, que abarca todos los aspectos de la vida humana y si queremos sobrevivir en esta guerra, tenemos primero que entender cómo es que se está desarrollando y seguidamente proceder coherentemente en la defensa de la vida. A eso se reduce todo. Centenario de la Revolución Aymara Tawantinsuyu, por Milciades Ruiz Rojas. La persistente protesta social en Puno actual, con destacado protagonismo aymara, hace recordar a la Revolución de Huancho en 1923 y al combatiente revolucionario Jorge Toque Apasa, descendiente de Túpac Katari, era de Mobo, comunidad de Conima. Murió en 1966 en la guerrilla javierero de la selva yacuchana bajo los ideales de una patria socialista. Va esta nota en su homenaje. El compañero Toque Apasa no murió en vano. Finalmente las tierras que los gamonales de la raigambre colonial arrebataron a los aymaras y por las que tanto lucharon, derramando su sangre, fueron devueltas a las comunidades ancestrales con la reforma agraria decretada por el gobierno del general Juan Velasco Alvarado tras la lucha guerrillera de la década de 1960. Los aymaras llevan más de un milenio de resistencia luchando por no perder su identidad étnica. Surgieron en los tiempos del Tiahuanaco y están en el origen mismo del Tawantinsuyu, formado por los japas provenientes del Titicaca. Eran parte del Collasuyu y aunque sufrieron el virreinato y la república segregacionista, nunca pudieron ser desarraigados de su cultura ancestral ni de su idioma son indómitos por naturaleza. Por una nefasta decisión del dictador vitalicio Simón Bolívar, el Alto Perú pasó a ser la República Bolívar, hoy Bolivia, y aunque fueron forzados a dividirse en dos países distintos, mantienen su integridad étnica, sus ideales ancestrales y su hermandad nativa, donde quiera que se encuentren. Para ellos no hay frontera que los separe. El pueblo aymara tiene una historia heroica que la dominación colonial y republicana ha sepultado para que las nuevas generaciones no sigan el ejemplo de sus ancestros. En el Perú, la predominancia de la raigambre extranjera dura hasta la actualidad, desde la conquista española. Esta predominancia es foco de rebeldía de quienes se resisten a aceptarla. Las efemérides que nos hacen celebrar es a su conveniencia política. Allí no figuran las heroicidades andinas luchando por su emancipación. Estamos obligados a someternos contra nuestra voluntad, pero el rencor histórico sigue latente ante la marginación racial, idiomática, económica, laboral, etc. No encontrarán a los aymaras en la oficialidad de las Fuerzas Armadas, ni en el cuerpo diplomático, ni en los círculos exclusivos de la descendencia colonial, pero no se arredran ante el infortunio racista. Capacidad les sobra. Aunque la predominancia adversa nos ha inculcado la cultura de la subestimación ante las clases sociales dominantes, aunque se nos ha impuesto costumbres e idiomas extranjeros, desdeñando lo nuestro, aunque se nos impuso una religión ajena para hacernos sumisos ante los opresores, con la consabida promesa de que de nosotros será el reino de los cielos, los collas ancestrales se mantienen aferrados a su heredad, jamás se rendirán. Ellos siempre han luchado denodadamente como ahora contra todo sistema opresor, tienen conciencia de su realidad adversa y a pesar de que desde niños nos enseñan a venerar a los libertadores de los mistis colonialistas, lo cierto es que ellos no vinieron a liberar al Tawantinsuyu ni a los aborígenes, no, vinieron a independizar el virreinato, separándolo del imperio español y hacer del Perú una monarquía con dinastía europea, sin devolverle su patria a los nativos. Esto está documentado y en actas firmadas. Por eso, tras esa independencia ajena en 1867, estalló en Huancané la gran rebelión que duró un año y movilizó a miles de nativos. La lucha se extendió en las provincias de Azángaro, Lampa, Puno y otras, llegando a tomar la ciudad de Puno. Los abusos de la República eran peores que los de la colonia. Como sabemos, los españoles con la conquista del Tawantinsuyu despojaron de sus tierras a los nativos e implantaron el trabajo forzado gratuito, tazamani, semaneros, faeneros, hongos. Les arrebataban sus bienes y asesinaban impunemente a los rebeldes. En 1867, sumados a estos abusos, se dispuso que los nativos pagasen 3 nuevos gravámenes, 5 pesos para los gastos de la defensa contra España, limosnas de 2 reales para terminar la Catedral de Puno y una contribución personal de 1 y 1.5 pesos. Ante la rebelión, la represión fue criminal. El 2 de enero de 1868, el ejército enviado por el gobierno de Mariano Ignacio Prado masacró a los rebeldes que durante 4 horas presentaron combate a orillas del lago Titicaca. Tras la derrota, muchos nativos fueron ejecutados en el campo de batalla. 71 líderes fueron encerrados en 2 pequeñas chozas de lecho de paja que fueron incendiadas con los prisioneros en su interior. No obstante, el pueblo aymara no se dio por vencido. Fue así que en 1915 más de 10.000 nativos emprendieron otra gran rebelión liderada por Teodomiro Gutiérrez Lumimaki, Mano de Piedra. Se proclamó el Estado Federal del Tawantinsuyu, iniciando otra insurgencia contra los latifundistas. Aunque fueron derrotados, esta sublevación sería premonitoria de la gran sublevación indígena del sur andino entre 1919 y 1923, cuando estallaron 50 levantamientos nativos tanto en Puno como en Cusco. En 1919, Leguía asumió por segunda vez la presidencia del país, acogiendo el clamor de proteger a la población nativa. La nueva Constitución de 1920 decía en su artículo 58, el Estado protegerá a la raza indígena y dictará leyes especiales para su desarrollo y cultura en armonía con sus necesidades. La nación reconoce la existencia legal de las comunidades indígenas y la ley declarará los derechos que les correspondan. No obstante, los latifundistas seguían gobernando en provincias y por más que los aymaras viajaban a la capital para presentar sus quejas ante el gobierno, todo quedaba en nada. Los senadores diputados eran de parentela terrateniente. Fue por ello que los aymaras de la comunidad de Huancho, Huancané Puno, al no encontrar solución a sus reclamos históricos, el 21 de noviembre de 1922 tomaron la determinación de fundar la República Aymara Tawantinsuyu con el apoyo de las otras comunidades de la región. La capital sería Huancho, Lima, y diseñaron un plano con las ubicaciones para ministerios y lugares públicos, replicando la capital vigente. Los poderosos latifundistas del legislativo presionaron a Leguía para que devele la insurgencia. En la mañana del 16 de diciembre de 1923 empezó la represión y los primeros en ser fusilados fueron los líderes, pero ante la protesta de la población dispararon a matar, acribillando a más de 2.000 comuneros. Esta matanza tampoco los amedrentó, porque la dignidad aymara es la fuente de su moral ancestral. Ya en el siglo XXI, todavía está fresca la movilización masiva de los aymaras en mayo del 2011, conocido como el Aymarazo. Tomaron la ciudad de Puno en protesta porque el corrupto gobierno aprista autorizó ejecución del proyecto minero Santa Ana en Huacuyani, Chucuito, en beneficio de la empresa canadiense Bear Creek Mining Corporation. Lo hicieron en defensa de su patrimonio ancestral, pues la contaminación de las aguas y suelo de su hábitat ecológico los perjudica en todos los aspectos. Peor aún, si estos proyectos estaban prohibidos en zonas de frontera. El Frente de Defensa de los Recursos Naturales de la zona sur de Puno había hecho los reclamos, pero sus peticiones fueron burladas. Siempre la misma historia. Hicieron marchas de sacrificio, paros y plantones, pero nada. La indignación superó la paciencia y se violentaron los ánimos. Varios edificios públicos fueron siniestrados, la represión nos hizo esperar y la protesta fue criminalizada judicialmente, siendo encarcelados los dirigentes del movimiento social por delitos de contra la tranquilidad pública y otros agregados para desalentarlos. Pero siguen en pie de lucha, como lo demuestran en la actual rebeldía social contra el sistema político que los ignora. Si los dominantes creen que con lo dicho hago apología a la violencia, les recuerdo que sus ancestros usaron la violencia para destruir el Tawantinsuyu, que sus ancestros accedieron a la independencia del virreinato utilizando la violencia armada, que el capitalismo se impuso sobre la monarquía mediante la revolución violenta y que la violencia de los opresores es la que genera su negación como contraviolencia de los oprimidos. Pero no se crea que los aymaras son puramente campesinos. Están en las ciencias, tecnología, artes, literatura, etc. y dominan el comercio fronterizo. He caminado con ellos en la conquista de nuevas tierras en la selva del Valle Alto Tambopata, donde estaba yo de incógnito cumpliendo una misión revolucionaria en los años de la gesta del Che, y los he visto compartir con los quechuas un territorio muy distinto al altiplano. No tenían costumbre de tomar café, pero asumieron el reto de cultivarlo y han obtenido varios premios mundiales en café orgánico y de calidad especial. Los aymaras son también emprendedores empresariales, inversionistas inmobiliarios y comerciales en el emporio comercial Gamarra, Lima, y prosperan los aymaras de Unicachi con las cadenas de centros comerciales Unicachi que poseen en varios distritos limeños. Al conmemorar el centenario de la Revolución Aymara de Huancho, se ha lanzado la iniciativa de celebrar este acontecimiento con actos recordatorios y un acto cívico central en Huancané o en el mismo Huancho, el sábado 16 de diciembre, con asistencia de delegaciones no oficiales. Los que desean apoyar esta iniciativa pueden encontrar mayor información en grupoemancipador.com, 23 de febrero del 2023.
Aprender a mirar hacia adentro del Anahuac. Es un imperativo de conciencia la necesidad de autodescubrimiento de nuestros ancestros. Reconocer su sensibilidad, talento y múltiples capacidades de nuestros viejos abuelos abrirá los diques contenidos de nuestras fortalezas y potencialidades. El pueblo anahuaca se debe de recuperar por sí mismo, de adentro hacia afuera y de abajo hacia arriba. Necesitamos limpiar nuestros cerebros y nuestros corazones de 5 siglos de mentiras y difamaciones. Reaprender todo nuevamente desde el principio. ¿Desde quiénes fueron mis ancestros? ¿Cuáles fueron sus grandes logros? ¿Cómo resolvieron los grandes desafíos para entender quiénes somos, de qué material estamos hechos y qué podemos lograr? Debemos de redescubrir la razón de vida del ser humano, la familia y la comunidad. Debemos de despertar la sabiduría que está depositada en nuestro banco genético de información cultural. Debemos volver a pedirles a nuestros ancestros que nos ayuden, nos asesoren y nos guíen en este nuevo camino que ellos hace muchos siglos ya recorrieron venturosamente. Tenemos que convencernos de nuestra grandeza histórica. Necesitamos desmantelar todas las mentiras y calumnias de los invasores sobre nuestro milenario pasado. No solo conocer la verdad de la invasión y ocupación, sino remontarnos a la invención del maíz, la milpa y la nixtamalización. Conocer la huella antigua del pueblo que midió el movimiento. Debemos de redescubrir la maravilla de la conciencia energética. Retomar como una guía la justa y perfecta mecánica celeste para aplicarla en la mecánica terrestre, porque la armonía se determina en lo que es arriba, es abajo. Recordar que somos seres luminosos que vivimos en un universo total y plenamente interconectado, arriba y abajo. Que nuestra madre querida es parte también de una familia en torno a nuestra estrella y que el Sol, con su comunidad, es parte de la galaxia y toda ella con el universo. Debemos de recuperar nuestra conciencia galáctica para actuar de manera responsable y armoniosa con el universo. Es un imperativo existencial liberar nuestras mentes colonizadas. Debemos de cambiar nuestra intoxicada y deformada visión del mundo y la vida occidentalizada y volver a ser lo que somos en esencia espiritual e histórica. Educayotl hace.
El colonialismo de izquierda. por Atawallpa Ovidedo Freire. Evo, el colonizador indígena, entre comillas. El gobierno de Bolivia presentó orgulloso la traducción del himno nacional a 8 lenguas indígenas. El himno de los criollos, jaras, en lengua indígena, es puro folclorismo que coloniza aún más. Qué diferente hubiera sido saber que ahora los indígenas cantan su propio himno, y más descolonizador todavía que ahora todos los bolivianos cantan un himno milenario. Solo un ejemplo para ilustrar qué es el Estado plurinacional, condumio criollo y forma indígena. Evo canta que su triunfo es haber logrado la inclusión, entre comillas, de los indígenas al Estado-sociedad boliviano. Esto es, el gobierno indígena, entre comillas, les incorporó al mundo criollo colonial en calidad de mestizos, es decir, desculturizados y descomunalizados, tal como indicó el censo del 2012, en donde los mestizos aumentaron en relación al 2001, que hasta esa época se reconocía ante todo indígena. A mí también me ha sorprendido el dato. No sé si estamos en una etapa de desplazamiento o en una etapa de mayor mentalidad colonizadora, decía Evo el 2012. Él ni su partido hasta ahora son conscientes que en el gobierno indígena se ha producido la etapa de mayor mentalidad colonizadora. No se produjo la inclusión de la sociedad criolla dentro del mundo indígena, sino al revés. Por ende, se han ido mestizando cada vez más. Hoy, con 10 años de más colonización indígena, entre comillas, el número de desindigenizados es mucho mayor. Otra cosa sería que los mestizos se hubieran indigenizado o andinizado en todo este tiempo. La ciudad del Alto hoy tiene 1.300.000 personas, superando a La Paz, en apenas 15 años, es decir, el urbanismo exacerbado y una descomunalización brutal. En el gobierno indígena, entre comillas, se han presentado 36 solicitudes de autonomías en 18 años, apenas se han aprobado 4. No les interesan, les quieren controlados por el Estado, es decir, por el partido, más claro, por Evo Linera. La visión estatista, centralista, mesiánica, les ha conducido a realizar el mayor y más grande proceso de colonización en 500 años. Colonialismo de izquierda. Frantz Fanon, en su obra Piel negra, máscaras blancas, explica cómo el colonialismo penetra en la mente de todos. Una persona en su presencia física puede tener un tipo, pero puede terminar pensando y hasta agradeciendo al colonizador por colonizarlo. La actitud colonial es inmanente a todos quienes son formados en la cultura occidental, de cualquier vertiente o conocimiento. Es la impronta eurocéntrica que se asume como la superior o más desarrollada. La izquierda no se salva de ello, se asume como la vanguardia de la liberación de todos los pueblos. La izquierda invadió todo el mundo con el marxismo-leninismo, poniéndolos como los únicos referentes para la revolución. En la época de Evo se decía que al final el que gobernaba era García Linera. En una entrevista Linera confesó que Evo siempre le consultaba para tomar cualquier decisión y que a la final gobernaban los dos, confirmando que lo que se hizo en el gobierno indígena fue lo que delineó un leninista de cabecera, entre comillas, a nombre de lo indígena y con la piel negra, entre comillas, de Evo. A 3 años de esta declaración, regresó de Argentina para reñirles a los indios plebeyos, entre comillas, para que dejen de pelearse entre ellos y no se divida el MAS. Y les precisó que el presidente Arce solo cumple un periodo de transición y luego debe regresar la figura de un indígena al frente del Estado, visión racista de un occidental formado. Lo que no dijo es que luego de que regrese la figura indígena al Estado plurinacional, él u otro igual dirigirán al gobierno indígena, entre comillas. La izquierda hasta ahora no es consciente de su colonialismo. En su paternalismo mesiánico, creen que deben darles pensando a los indios cómo empujar la liberación. Hemos visto ahora en Perú, Castillo, y en todo lado donde actúan los intelectuales de la liberación. En Ecuador, Isa es la máscara blanca. En 100 años no han sido capaces de estudiar las filosofías indígenas para plantearse otras tácticas y horizontes a sus fracasadas emancipaciones.
Soy